Hello, everyone. We're so excited to have you here with us today. I am Mary Axelson, the founder of WeMax Consulting, and also the co-founder of Breakout Leaders with Amy Wood. Amy and I are on a mission to empower ambitious leaders by championing human-centered leadership that integrates whole person success with organizational impact. And we're going to talk about today about how to live well, to lead well. I could not think of a more relevant and important time to be having this conversation right now. We are living in a world where loneliness is at its peak. People are feeling burnt out and disengaged, and experiencing high levels of disorientation with the amount of disruption and distraction that we experience on a daily basis. So this topic couldn't help us more as far as understanding what's going on, why health is so important, and what are those small practical steps that we're going to take. So Amy and I are super excited to have Kim and Michelle here with us today. We'll start with a brief introduction, Kim, Michelle, Amy, and then we'll jump in to the conversation. So Kim, would you like to kick it off with a brief introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, thank you so much, Mary and Amy, for having me and everybody for being here. I am the founder of Kim Lloyd Fitness, which I run. I live in Maine. I live in Topsom, Maine, but it is a virtual business. It's an online business. So, I do a lot of online coaching. And prior to that, I worked in person at Sperling Fitness in Kennebunk, Maine. I've been a coach for one way or the other. I've been a coach for pretty much my entire adult life. And my focus at this point is around strength training, nutrition, but also stress, sleep, and recovery. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so important. Thanks, Kim.
Jump in now. So
Yeah.
I'm Michelle LaFond. Also super excited to be here. I'm currently working as general counsel for Cocoon. It's an early stage company out of San Francisco where we build software that helps manage paid family, medical, caregiver, parental leaves, takes the complexity and compliance and all of that out. It's serving the mission, some of which we'll be talking about. I hail from Falmouth, Maine, though. So before I worked at Cocoon, I spent 25 years in corporate America and wear a lot of different hats in my life and in my job. And I'm excited to talk further about them.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Amy?
And I am Amy Wood. As Mary said, Mary and I are partners in Breakout Leaders, helping leaders to be happier and more productive. And I, as a psychologist, do quite a bit of coaching, executive coaching and training around the issue we're talking about today. So it's really a critical thing. Most people who come to coaching mention this as a problem, that they're wanting to be successful with their work, but they don't have time to take care of themselves. And how do they work in that priority? How do they integrate it all to achieve what Mary and I call whole person success?
Great. Thanks, Amy. So I always think a good place to start is with a definition and get us grounded in relation to the topic that we're going to have, the discussion we're going to have with the topic. So Kim and Michelle, can you share with us when you hear the words whole person success, what does that mean to you? And why is that so critically important when we think about leadership and how we become better leaders?
Michelle, you want to go first?
Sure, sure. It's a lot there. So I think of whole person, I guess maybe starting there. I can't compartmentalize my identities. So I'm a mother of three, I'm a colleague, I'm a worker, I'm a friend, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a partner. And I feel really strongly, especially with the benefit of many decades of trial and error, that you can't separate it all. So in order to show up in all of my roles and to do it in a healthy way, I have to really take care of myself. I've kind of learned that over time when I've overemphasized different parts of my life that doesn't feel good to not show up. So I think of whole person success as being physically healthy, mentally healthy, and really focused, effective, collaborative, and available to the people that I work with in my home life and in my personal life and in my work life.
Yeah, I love that. You're hitting on the point there, Michelle, that we often are in situations where we're being asked to compartmentalize ourselves versus being an integrated person, which is critical to whole person success. How about you, Kim?
I'm so glad I asked Michelle to go first because that's great. I can't add to that. It's perfect. Um, what I would say when I think about the whole person success and health, I'm coming at it from a strength coach perspective, personal training perspective. And one of the things that I found in my coaching career was that first of all, you can't, I say, pull on one string without other strings happening, and that's that it's very difficult to compartmentalize. You might do it where you need to do it, but inevitably a conversation about nutrition it might lead to a conversation around mental health. There's just a lot of overlap. And the other thing that I would say that really almost kind of surprised me initially when I started working as a coach, but then not as much, was that the more comfort and success that women in particular had with training with strength training, so the more confidence that they had around getting stronger, performing certain movements and lifts, the more that translated outside of that. So I saw women who left jobs and careers that weren't working for them or relationships that weren't working for them. And so there was a real transfer of, success over here affecting, it's almost like a domino effect. And that's one of those places where if you can find sometimes, some success in one area of your life, it can contribute to others. And so that's been sort of my experience with the kind of whole person, whole health experience.
Love that, Kim. So, do you think that by working with you and feeling stronger physically, that then that might also lead to building confidence and exploring other parts of oneself? Is that I kind of like you didn't say that explicitly, but that was like
That
what I was feeling through your conversation.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very succinct way of putting it. But there is, excuse me, something about deadlifting was one of my favorite movements that you could do. But there's something about a woman picking up like 200 pounds, and I promise you, all of you out here right now, you think you can't. I promise you, you can. That like you just feel like you can like literally chew the bumper off of a car when you walk out of the gym. Super gross, but you're welcome for that. But like, yeah, it is really that like that level of confidence, and it's almost like just finding your inner strength, and you're like, if I can do this, then.
Mm.
And it's just like it was one of my favorite things to watch. But yeah, it's the more comfortable, the stronger that you feel about yourself, about your body, the more you're like, hey, I can do this too.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you. Amy, you want to ask our
Yeah,
next question?
sure. Yeah, so Kim, I certainly know what you're talking about because I go to my gym 5 days a week and start my day that way. And I feel exactly like you're saying, I've never bit into a bumper, but I feel much
I mean,
better able to get through the day. I just feel pulled together, grounded, awake, energized. So I know what you're talking about is true, but I think all of us know what it's like to try to find the time to make that happen. And we live in a culture that prioritizes work over everything. So it's really hard sometimes when I know when Mary and I are working with our clients who are women leaders, it's hard to convince them to get off that treadmill of work and take that break. Start the day with exercise or eat better or whatever it is, sleep better, and really trust that that's going to improve things. So I'd love to hear from both of you, maybe a success story about someone you've worked with, Kim, and someone, maybe a colleague or an employee you've had, Michelle, where you saw them really struggling with this, but then saw them actually figure it out and get to a better place where they experienced whole person success. Do you want to start, Michelle?
Yes. I would say I can think of a person who was struggling, who was a direct report in my prior life, who was struggling And I think there were several things that were components of that. The first is, I think, having, as a leader, having the ability to be perceptive, to ask open-ended questions, to appropriately respect the balance of personal information, but to create a safe environment where someone can let you know if they're experiencing any challenges and invite the
Mm.
conversation. The first line was direct, but again, respecting boundaries. And then the second is modeling as a leader, I think vulnerability and behaviors. So a few things along the way with this particular person, I realized that some of my behaviors as a leader of working a lot and emailing at night and basically blurring the line of home and work was maybe not helping the person take the time that they needed to set boundaries so that they could be available for the challenges they were having in their personal life. So creating from the conversation, moving to awareness. And then the third would be connecting them with whether it's resources that are available through employment or just outside of work, because we did have things like employee resource groups and wellness programs and employee assistant programs that were able to, again, without being invasive, because I think it is really a fine line in being supportive and accompanying people in their journey and
Mhm.
then being directive or invasive. And so I think to be frank, some of it was a trial and error. I think the first
Yeah.
couple times as a manager and a leader that I found struggling employees and was trying to navigate, it was an evolution of learning how to take my cues and really take on the role of accompanying people in their journey rather than being directive. So, without divulging their specifics, I would say
Yes.
those are the components of the journey that we took.
Yeah, so really you were accompanying them on their journey, but not telling them what to do. And that's so important. And also what you said about it being trial and error, I think that's really vital to know because so many people think, especially at the start of the year, I'm going to start being healthier. I'm going to start going to the gym every day, even if I've never been to the gym before. Starting in really well, even though I've always had junk food throughout the day. And it's incremental. And we have a lot of false starts and we fall off track and get back on. Um, what about you, Kim? Tell us a story about someone you've helped.
Yeah, there's two that come to mind, and I love too the Michelle, the trial and error. I always like tell my clients trial and error, not trial and failure.
Mhm.
So I love that approach. And so in one case, I had a client who is a criminal defense attorney, works like 70, 80 hours a week. And we had a conversation around sleep. Sleep is one of the, it's one of the, it's challenging, but it's one of the best, I would say almost like a superpower because if you have better sleep, good things happen. And so she actually was working with her at the gym. She left the gym, came back 2 years later, and was like, you know what? I spent a lot of time working on my sleep. And once she started to have better quality sleep, and there's a lot of directions you could have an entire conversation about this, but other things started to fall into place for her. And so that was one situation where for her, by prioritizing sleep, she was able to bring more energy because there's a time component, of course, to doing workouts, but there's also an energy component to it. If you don't have the energy when you have the time, it
Yeah.
can be really tricky. And the other client that I worked with was one of my executive coaching clients, and she was a C-suite level employee at a large coffee company. And so she was constantly like, next week's going to be better. Next week's going to be better.
Mhm.
Next week's going to be better. And then finally one day, and we were meeting on a weekly basis. Finally one day, she was like, she had the mindset shift where she was like, it's never going to be the right time. It's never going to be the good time. And so from there, we went to the domino habit that I mentioned earlier. Okay, what's one thing you can do that you feel like is going to have, the most effect? And so in some cases, people are like, if I'm exercising more, I'm making better, eating, nutrition choices, or if I'm making better nutrition choices, I tend to want to work out. So trying to figure out what that domino habit is, or sleep. The second conversation she and I had a lot was that we would make a plan from week to week. We would look at her schedule and say, all right, what's the minimum you can do for this particular week? And I think finding a minimum for movement can be really important. And what is that minimum? It depends on where you're at. So really taking a look at that. And I like to have people, if you're listening to this and you're like, all right, I'm not doing a whole lot right now, what's the next step? How many steps are you getting? Can you get more steps? So you have the minimum part of that. And then the last piece that I've used with a number of clients that don't have a ton of time is micro workouts. And it's literally like I do 2 squats every time I get up to refill my water bottle. One of my clients, this was great. She was like, every time I'm frustrated in a meeting, I'm going to drop down to the floor and do dead bugs. I was like, cool, you do you, man. But it was the importance of saying like everything counts. So we often think about exercise and things like that as having to be really formal, 20, 30, 40 minutes. And it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to look like that. It's just about if you can get 30 to 60 minutes of strength training in the course of a week, you're doing a great job. So I really think the mindset shift, a domino habit, you're, figuring out your minimums, and then thinking outside the box about like what are some of the micro movements you can do, can really go a long way.
Yeah, that's
So many different strategies, Kim. Um, I think the question next, I think, Mary, we should ask.
yeah. Well, there's a few things I want to call out. So, first of all, Michelle, going back to what you were talking about, as a leader, I think it's really important that we're role modeling the behavior that we want to see from those around us. So if we're working long hours, if we're sending emails in the middle of the night, you are sending a message to your employees about what you're expecting from them, whether that's your intention or not, but that is the impact. So you're now building that expectation. So I loved, Michelle, that you called that out about how was I behaving? And then indirectly or directly, what kind of message is that sending to my team? And then Kim, you started to go to this place of habit stacking, which I love as well. And so how do you take something that you're already doing and incrementally build upon it, right? And so during the pandemic, one of the things that I started doing was walking with friends. And because I was missing being around people, so it was important for me to get my emotional need met. But then I was walking, so that I was getting my physical needs met as well. And then, right after that, I would come home and I would make sure that I had a nutritious breakfast, right? So I was bringing those three things together. So that was fabulous what the two of you
Yes,
just did.
really
I wanted to
great.
call those things out. But what I also find is that we often don't have a knowledge gap. Okay. It's like it's not that we don't know what we should be doing. We know to some extent what we should be doing, but we don't do it. And what I often hear from people is, I just don't even know where to start, or I feel overwhelmed, or how do I begin to prioritize? So one of the things that Amy and I talk about are micro steps, baby steps, and you talked about your micro, workouts. So for those in the audience, can you share with them just some small, very small incremental steps that they can start taking either today or tomorrow to start to prioritize their well-being, their wellness? Michelle or Kim, I'll let either one of you guys decide wants to jump in.
Maybe I can just build on some of what Kim said as well, the whole, I call it exercise snacking. So a couple of the things that I think I've been doing in my current job where it's a lot of remote is kind of combining things. So exercise snacking, we'll put on the calendar 15 minutes and it'll be an exercise snack. Like you just do whatever, building on what Kim says and what you said, just something. And then also being very visible on blocking the calendar on what you're doing when you're going for a walking time. And we also in person do walk and talk. So in the company, in our company, it's mental health awareness month. So some of my focus is very mental health thinking today is we will pay people to have a coffee and we'll have a walk-in coffee. So you can just pick a person you don't often work with and just go get a coffee on the company. And so kind of a mental health component and a physical as well, that you're connecting with people. You're again creating an environment where people can share anything that they may be struggling with.
Mm.
Love that. Thank you,
Yeah,
Michelle.
great idea.
Kim?
I love the exercise snacking. I like that. I like that phrasing for that. I think that in terms of like, all right, where do I start? What's a 1 minute action?
Mm.
Even that can feel too broad though, because you're like, all right, there's a lot of different categories here. And I will say that in general, focusing on exercise and nutrition at the same time can be really challenging. It's tough to put, to do all of, we have a lot of energy sometimes when we start something new, but then again, like, can we sustain it throughout? So I like starting with one thing. So I would say, all right, if we boil it down to say movement or nutrition, where do you want to start? So choose that category, and then from there, again, like what's a 1 minute? It's literally a little bit more today than yesterday, and that's where I go to. Again, if you're someone who is not getting a lot of movement and steps, most of us have. I have a toxic relationship with my watch. Tells me how to feel, but it's like most of us have access to something that will track that. So if you're not getting any movement in, then it's like, all right, what's just a little bit more? If you're getting, I would say 10,000 steps is a lie, just so you know that. That just came I don't know if most people know this at this point, but it was like just a random number from a advertisement for the first pedometer. But if you can get like a minimum of 4,000 is a good place to start. And then, anywhere from 4 to 7,000. So that's like a starting place there. And again, it's just a little bit more. And then if you're doing that, then it's like, all right, what's the next, phase of movement, which would be, some sort of exercise routine or like I mentioned, squats, things like that. So, um, a 1 minute action, I think, is a good place to start because I had one of my clients during COVID who came up with this, and I loved it. She called it her to done list, and it was the list that she made at the end of the day, reminding her of all of the things that she'd done. And
Mm.
so that we have motivation backwards in our society. It's like you don't feel like doing it first. It's like action breeds motivation. And so that's where the 1 minute action, whatever it is that might be, like acknowledging that you did it at the end of the day and understanding that, okay, a little bit is going to lead to a little bit more.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Pam made a comment and completely agree 100%. So thank you for raising that as well, Pam. And feel free to share in the chat box anything that has worked for you as well. There's a lot of knowledge and wealth and healthy people in this conversation with us. So we'd love to hear from you too.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to say something about Pam's comment and then add another point that sometimes, we feel guilty because we can't force ourselves to do things like get out and exercise regularly, eat properly, or whatever it is, get out and socialize because that's healthy too. And it could be that there's something else. It's not just that you're lazy or, you don't have enough willpower or whatever. Maybe you do need an antidepressant. Maybe you're suffering from some kind of condition that's making it hard for you to do that. Another thing is it's important to figure out your way of doing it. So I'm sure you've experienced this, Kim, with your clients. I certainly see clients when I recommend exercise and I'll suggest something like, well, maybe go to a class and say, well, I hate classes. I don't want to go to the gym or I don't like exercising alone. We all have our preferred ways. And when we find that way that works for us, we tend to be more motivated, and that takes some experimenting.
Mhm. I tell clients like the best exercise to do is what you'll do. Like they're like, what's the best workout? It's the one that you'll do, whatever that might
Right.
be. And just Pam, for like I'm glad that you brought that up. I have on my website, I do have a long blog that I wrote about my own struggle with mental health, and I would not be doing a lot of what I'm doing today without antidepressants. So I just want to say thank you for naming and acknowledging that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And
So,
Claire,
Amy, do you want to? Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to
oh, I
say,
just wanted to say I see Claire's comment about getting outside, and that's so important. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Claire, because so much research points to, and we have our own personal experience pointing to this too, that when you get outside and just breathe a little bit of fresh air, especially if you're looking at greenery in nature, it boosts your mood. It boosts your energy. It boosts your ability to solve problems, to be innovative. So the more time in nature, the better, especially if you're moving around.
yeah. And then Sydney raised meditation as well. That's actually been one of my goals this year. And to your point, Kim, starting off by doing it for a minute. And then once I feel like I have built the muscle around it, then maybe I can do it, I do it for 2 minutes. And so incrementally approaching it. But believe it or not, we are almost close to closing out the discussion. So, Amy, do you want to ask our final question?
Sure. So if people were to take one piece of advice, because there's been so many things mentioned, if you had to give one piece of advice for people to leave with, Michelle, I'd love to hear what you have to say, and then Kim.
My advice is to just get started. But I'm more focused on the people around us. So we've talked a lot about ourselves, and I'm very community focus and partner and extroverted focus. I know not everybody is, but I would say just get someone to do it with you too, that you don't have to do any of this alone, whether it's lying in bed listening to a sleep meditation that helps you get to sleep. There are the Kims of the world, there are, Mary and Amy's of the world. You don't have to do it alone. So just get started.
That's great advice. And studies show we tend to do better with everything when we're trying to build new habits if we have a partner in that to be accountable to. Kim, what's your piece of advice?
Yeah, I realize there's a lot of directions you could go with sleep. I know that that's not necessarily the conversation we're having, but it is difficult to do some of these things if you don't have the energy, if you haven't recovered. And so sleep can be complicated. I understand that, but if you are someone who struggles to wake up feeling rested, which is something like 80% of the people, in our country, then just an awareness there that some focus on quality of sleep. If you're able to do that or have a conversation with your doctor about it, that it can contribute to other good things, happening for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kim and Michelle, for joining us today. I will leave you with water, sleep, and exercise. They are the top three indicators of well-being. So even if you just drink water every 15 minutes, or you get outside and go for a walk for 15 minutes, or you give yourself 15 minutes of extra sleep, it will have a profound impact. So we loved having everyone here with us today. Thank you for participating. Michelle and Kim, thank you for so much of your insight and carving out time in your day to be here with Amy and I and everybody in the virtual room. And we look forward to seeing everyone next month for our next breakout leader session, and we'll be posting about that soon. Have a great day.
Inviting us. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you.